Hi, I'm Josh Maxson. This is my story. I came to Red Lion in the year 2000. I was 50 years old. I had been teaching, I had left the nuclear plant in 1991 and decided to try teaching for an occupation because I was pretty well burnt out. 65 hours a week was probably the typical time at the plant, and then there were the wake-up phone calls. I tried finding a job within the power plant, transferring, and that didn't work, and I finally decided, I'm going to try teaching for a year. So I went to my church had a Christian school, and I said, I'm going to try teaching for a year. I didn't expect to be there much more than a year, maybe 2 years before I ran out of money because the pay was much less. But God provided, and I was there 9 years at what's called Park Bible Academy. I decided I really needed to make a change, not out of my occupation, but just to a different school. So I looked at 3 Christian schools that I could commute to from where I lived. And I chose this one based on the fact that they were building a new building, and I liked Dave Thompson, the administrator, and I just saw some possibilities here that were different than the other two. So in the year 2000, at age 50, I think I turned 51 that year. Before school started, I started teaching here. That was 18 years ago. It's been a good time at Red Lion. I've seen the school grow in quality. I've seen the addition of the AP courses, which they asked me to teach, and I've gotten good at those. AP Physics, 3 different courses, and the 2 AP Calculuses. It's been good for me to stretch my intellect. Personally, for me, I feel God's hand in it because I just get a thrill out of encouraging students that I think are capable in the direction of engineering or the physical sciences or math. And I've seen a lot of students really come to fruition by taking calculus and physics and go on to engineering school. So I feel somewhat prideful. I feel good about that because I think I was part of that. And that's one of the reasons you feel like God has placed you where He wants you when you have that kind of success. Okay, why am I leaving? Several reasons. So I've wanted to do more in my artwork. I've wanted to do more. I've got to fix up my house. I would like to move away because I have no family. There are 4 families. I have 4 sons, and one's in Oregon, one's in Texas, one in Massachusetts, and one in New York State. They all have children, 12 grandchildren. And it'd be nice to be near one of them. God has provided a replacement for me in the form of Mr. Rao, who is better qualified to teach the things that I've been teaching than I am. And he's very experienced, and I'm sure he's very good. I hear very good things. So that's another confirmation that God's saying, yeah, you can go, Jeff. So, and I reserve the possibility that I'm out of His will, and I'm sure He'll bring me back to teach someplace if that's His will. One final word of wisdom to my seniors. Never forget, have fun storming the castle.
Academically, he definitely widened my ability to think through mathematics and understand concepts better, and I felt like doing that class helped me in every other subject I had because it helped me critical think way more than any other class I had.
Well, in Mr. Jackson's classes, in physics specifically, we learn a lot about how God's world works, and I've been able to appreciate God's creation more and just all the intricate designs that are in the world, in the universe.
Having him speak in chapels was kind of cool this year because a lot of the guy teachers, they only teach the subjects that you have them for. So it's cool to see them speak in chapel, and you can see their walk and like how they view scriptures. So you can kind of get knowledge from them through the chapels instead of just classroom interactions. Even though Mr. Jackson every day prays before class and he reads a devotion or he reads something from the Bible.
Mr. Jackson has helped me academically a tremendous amount. Most of you guys know I'm not good at math nor science, so I'm in this class trying to like keep up because he's like really fast and just really passionate, and he's just like going and going about whatever he's talking about, and I'm like get lost in the sauce kind of, but he always takes his time to motivate me and always sit down and like actually work through a problem with me, which I greatly appreciate.
Academically, Mr. Jackson, he's one of the best teachers I've ever had. Mr. Jackson is a legend. Maybe 3 times I've heard Mr. Jackson say, "I don't know," to a question. Other than that, he knows like these crazy numbers that I have to look up like in a textbook just to know, just like the mass of the earth and all these weird like numbers, like abstract things that no one knows except him. And he's a good teacher, just relates to students really well and just explains things in a way that we can understand.
Mr. Jackson helped me spiritually by reading devotions out of a book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, in class, and it was a really neat perspective on God's Word and why He is real from a Christian and science point of view.
Mr. Jackson was my physics teacher, and I think through that class specifically is where I discovered that I wanted to be an engineer, through applied math and working through the numbers and how it applies to real life was kind of what segued me into studying engineering as I went to college and kind of unlocked that passion for problem solving. And I think that gave me a lot of direction going into college.
He really showed me how to see God through math and physics, because those are things that are truth. And it's really cool to just have a teacher really show you how to see God through those things.
Mr. Jackson, he was a big help academically because he really knew his stuff. A lot of teachers teach, but they don't all know the subject like Mr. Jackson knows physics. At least that's what he taught me, physics and math. He had such a deep understanding that the way he taught, you could really tell he knew his stuff. And most people don't know this, but he actually invented physics. Isaac Newton, he was the one that got hit with the apple, so he gets a lot of credit, but it was really Mr. Jackson there with his slide ruler that did all the math.
Academically speaking, Mr. Jackson encouraged me in all of my endeavors. He definitely helped me when it came to college. He wrote me letters of recommendation, and I just really appreciated everything he did.
Probably the biggest thing I remember about Mr. Jackson, about his class, is just how consistent it was, and I could always expect the same from Mr. Jackson. I could always expect him to smile and encourage me when I was feeling down, so that was always just a big help for me spiritually.
So he was my physics teacher my senior year of high school. He made science challenging and interesting. And he was one of the reasons why I got into chemistry in college, and also one of the reasons why I eventually started teaching as well.
I'll miss you, Mr. Jackson.
I'll miss you, Mr. Jackson.
I miss you, Mr. Jackson.
I'll 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 miss you, Mr. Jackson.
I will miss you, Mr. Jackson.
I'll miss you, Mr. Jackson.
I'll miss you, Mr. Jackson.
I will miss you, Mr. Jackson.
Goodbye, Mr. Jackson.